Hey all you cool cats and kittens, it's Stephanie here. Welcome to my channel. Being stuck inside my house for the past month really hasn't been all that bad for me because I've had extra time to binge watch shows like Tiger King. Once I saw those adorable tiger cubs, I knew I had to turn one into a cake. This cake turned out so cute, so let's get into it. For this cake, you'll need to bake 5 8-inch round cakes and a half sphere. I have also cut a small slit in the cake so I can easily slide them onto my structure. And then I begin adding my cake and buttercream frosting. This is my American buttercream with crushed Oreos added to it. It is so delicious, and I will put this recipe down in the description box. And once I have an even layer of frosting, I continue layering up more cake and frosting. I've stacked these cakes up at a slight angle, as you can see here, and I pushed it forward just a touch more to give it more of an angle. And then I slide in another piece of cake to fill in that little gap under the head. Moving on to the head, I continue stacking up my cake and buttercream frosting, and I will add the half sphere on the very top. This next part is the carving. I will tell you, this is one of the hardest parts for me. It is best to take your time and just take off a little bit of cake at a time. Try not to stress out too much, because if you take off too much, you can always add some back later if you need to. Be sure to save all those scraps for cake pop filling later on. For the legs, I'm using a circle cutter to mark where I'd like the top of the leg. And I begin cutting away the cake to create the leg. I noticed I cut off too much of the top of the leg, so I filled it in with cake pop filling. I marked it with my cutter and trimmed it down again. And I ended up bulking out this entire leg area with cake pop filling so it would stick out more. I also noticed that the back looked too curved, so I decided to thin it out just a little. Try to go thinner than what you actually want, because once you get it covered in the chocolate, it will end up being bigger anyways. And that is something that I always struggle with, because sometimes my cakes are a little bit too big. Next, I decided to fill out the chest of my tiger, and this is also cake pop filling. I am also cutting away some cake near the eyes so that I can get those refined. You don't need to take off too much for the eyes, because we're going to come back later and fix those up. Once I have it completely carved, I'm covering it in chocolate ganache. My chocolate started out pretty thin because I had just freshly made it, and then as I got it on there, it started to set up, which was exactly what I wanted. And then I smoothed that out with my flexible plastic smoother. To cover this cake, I bought 5 pounds of Hot Hands modeling chocolate. I absolutely love this brand, but one thing I do not love is the cost of it. It is very expensive. It tastes great and smooths wonderfully, which is why I will spend extra on it. It is worth it. I've dusted my countertop with cornstarch, and I'm rolling out a piece of my modeling chocolate. Next, I'm spraying the cake with water, but you could also use piping gel too if the water isn't sticky enough for you. I'm covering this cake in panels and smoothing it out the best that I can. Smoothing the chocolate requires the warmth from your hands. So if your cake is cold, and I know I always love working with cold cake, but if it is cold, you will have more trouble smoothing out the chocolate. Now that I have it covered in chocolate, I'm completely scratching up the entire cake with a sharp tool to create the hair. To make larger pieces of hair, I'm snipping the sides with my small scissors. And I did that around the sides of the head and also around his legs too. Let's move on to the eyes. I've already drawn a basic eye shape onto my cake. I'm defining these a bit more by using my thumb to push the cake inwards in this eye area. Next, I'm adding his nose, and I'm using a dressing tool to create his cute mouth shape. And then I'm adding a little nose too. My tiger's back paws are modeling chocolate. It's easier to add parts like this with modeling chocolate rather than cake. And if your client or whoever you're giving this to doesn't like big pieces of modeling chocolate, they can easily just take these pieces off and then dig right into the cake. And then next I'm giving him some toes with my Dresden tool. The front legs and paws are modeling chocolate too. Sometimes I'll use homemade modeling chocolate for pieces like these because I don't like wasting too much of my expensive modeling chocolate. Alright, the ears are triangles of modeling chocolate. Once I had them attached to the cake, I decided to curve the ear around towards the front. I trimmed down the ears too, but in the end, I actually did not need to do that. They look really cute being big, and that's how they are in real life. Tigers have bigger ears. For the eyes, I'm first filling them in with white fondant. And next I'm wiping some shortening onto the whites, and then I add kind of a mustard color iris and a black circle pupil. Next I'm lining the eye with logs of modeling chocolate, and I scratch these up to make them look hairy too. I always love painting lines in the eyes. I think it really brings out the eye and makes it look more realistic. So I am brushing brown lines in the eyes and I'm outlining them in a darker brown. To finish off those cute eyes, I'm adding 2 small white dots in the eyes. Now he is really starting to come to life. Up next is the painting. This part is scary but also fun. I started out using my Sweet Sticks paints, which was working nicely, but then I started worrying I was going to run out of paint, so I switched to gel color that I thinned out with vodka, and that also worked out beautifully. After some painting though, I felt he was too orange, so I dipped a paper towel in vodka and I took off some of the color, which I think helped to lighten it up a bit. I am also adding in some different shades of orange and some white around the ears and on the chest and the chin. Now that I have a good base color, I'm going back and adding the black stripes to his face. Be sure to have a bunch of tiger images to refer to so you get the stripe pattern on his face going in the right direction. For a lighter shade of black, you can dip the brush in the paint and then wipe it off on a paper towel and then brush it onto the cake. And that'll give a little bit of a lighter shade of black. I'm also filling in these little holes in his muzzle with some black paint, and that will give it some shading. I'm using my Sweet Sticks paints for his nose. You could also just use pink modeling chocolate for his nose too, and then you wouldn't have to paint it. And then I'm finishing off the stripes all over his body and tail. My daughter thought it would be cute to add eyebrows, so I created these out of modeling chocolate and I textured them to look like hair too. I think she was definitely right about the eyebrows. I think it looks cuter that way. I also added a trim around his ears to make them look more fluffy and hairy. I also got my scissors back out and I snipped away some of that modeling chocolate to look even more fluffy. To finish off my tiger, I am giving him some wire whiskers, and these are just paper covered wires that I've cut and I bent them just slightly, and I am pushing those into the cake. And finally, I'm covering my board with green coconut because he is in the jungle after all. And I'm lining the board with some glittery tape, which actually fell right off after this, so it wasn't a very good idea. My tiger cake is complete. I think he turned out so adorable. This is up there in my all-time favorite cakes because it is so cute, and I really loved making this one. Thank you all for watching, and please let me know if you have any ideas for me. I always love hearing those ideas. Thank you all, and I will see you again next time. Bye, everybody.